Bienvenidos. I'm Marisa Bono, the CEO of Every Texan. After joining Every Texan in May of this year, I have been continuously humbled by our partners, donors, board members, and staff who are firmly committed to achieving our vision for Texas, a state where every Texan thrives. The 87th legislative sessions have been challenging, to say the least, and yes, even demoralizing in unprecedented ways. Texas continues to make national headlines for all the wrong reasons, out of touch and dangerous policies that only undermine our state's collective prosperity. Yet we Texans know our state, and we know people are worth fighting for. I find great inspiration in the activists, organizers, and people of Texas fighting for policy that will lift up all Texans instead of pull us down. We will not stop until our state leaders deliver the just and equitable state that we all deserve. I encourage you to stay through the end of today's program, as I will make a special announcement regarding our 2021 Future of Texas honorees. Through a competitive process, we chose 2 Texans under 40 fighting for a more just and inclusive future. I will announce our awardees at the end of today's program. Now, before we dive in, I'd like to take a moment to express our deep gratitude to our 2021 Legacy Award event sponsors. Our sponsors understand social justice requires public policy. We are so proud to have so many partners committed to systemic, lasting change that will uplift all Texans. Thank you to our many sponsors for supporting people-centered policy solutions that will drive equity and opportunity for Texans of all backgrounds. Your generosity touches the lives of millions of Texans through the policy and advocacy gains we make at the Capitol and in our communities. Thank you to Hope and Robert F. Smith, Pat Ayers, former Legacy honorees Cecilia and Garrett Boone, longtime board member Flora Brewer, our founding family, the Farabee Family Fund, former Legacy honoree Lucy B. Johnson and Ian Turpin, Dale and Libby Linebarger, Cecilia and Tim Norwood, Raise Your Hand Texas, and Dee Dee Rose. I want to acknowledge the many other sponsors that have honored Darren Walker and supported Every Texan's work to build a just and equitable Texas. Thank you. And I would be remiss if I did not mention Amanda Posen, our Senior Manager of Strategic Growth, who led our communications team and all of our staff in building this incredibly dynamic and innovative event. Thank you. Now, it's my great honor to introduce Every Texan's 2021 Legacy Award honoree, Darren Walker. Darren is the president of the Ford Foundation, a $13 billion international social justice philanthropy. Under Darren's leadership, the Ford Foundation became the first nonprofit in U.S. history to issue a $1 billion designated social bond in U.S. capital markets for proceeds to strengthen and stabilize nonprofit organizations in the wake of COVID-19. Now that is visionary leadership. Before joining Ford, Darren was vice president at Rockefeller Foundation, overseeing global and domestic programs. In the 1990s, he was COO of Abyssinian Development Corporation, Harlem's largest community development organization. Darren co-chairs a number of important organizations, New York City's Mayoral Advisory Commission on City Art, Monuments, and Markers, and has served on the Independent Commission on New York City Criminal Justice and Incarceration Reform, and the UN International Labor Organization Global Commission on the Future of Work. He co-founded both the U.S. Impact Investing Alliance and the President's Council on Disability Inclusion and Philanthropy. He serves on many iconic boards, including Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts, the National Gallery of Art, Carnegie Hall, the High Line, the Committee to Protect Journalists, and the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. Educated exclusively in public schools, Darren was a member of the first Head Start class in 1965 and received a BA, BS, and JD degrees from the University of Texas at Austin. He has been included on numerous leadership lists, Time's annual 100 Most Influential People, Rolling Stone's 25 People Shaping the Future, Fast Company's Most Creative People in Business, Ebony's Power 100, and Out Magazine's Power 50. Most recently, Darren was named Wall Street Journal's 2020 Philanthropy Innovator. Every Texan is honoring Darren for his courageous commitment to racial and social justice. Darren grew up in Texas. He's a Texan, and he is an inspiration to all Texans and all Americans. I'm also humbled to introduce Secretary Henry Cisneros, our 2013 legacy honoree and a longtime friend of Every Texan. Henry Cisneros is chairman of American III, an infrastructure investment firm based in New York. Mr. Cisneros' community building career began at the local level. After serving 3 terms as a city council member in 1981, Mr. Cisneros became the first Hispanic American mayor of a major US city, my hometown, San Antonio, Texas. During his 4 terms as mayor, he helped rebuild the city's economic base and spurred the creation of jobs through massive infrastructure and downtown improvements. In 1992, President Clinton appointed Mr. Cisneros to be Secretary of the US Department of Housing and Urban Development. As a member of President Clinton's cabinet, Secretary Cisneros has been credited with initiating the revitalization of many of the nation's public housing developments and with formulating policies which contributed to achieving the nation's highest ever homeownership rate. After leaving HUD in 1997, Mr. Cisneros was president and chief operating officer of Univision Communications, the Spanish language broadcaster which has become the 5th most watched television network in the nation. Mr. Cisneros served on Univision's board of directors until 2020. Mr. Cisneros has also been author or editor of several important books, including Interwoven Destinies, Cities and the Nation. Mr. Cisneros holds a Bachelor of Arts and a master's degree in urban and regional planning from Texas A&M University, where he has been designated a distinguished alumnus. He earned a master's degree in public administration from Harvard University and holds a doctorate in public administration from George Washington University. We are thrilled to bring these 2 visionary leaders together today. But before we begin our fireside chat with Darren and Henry, we have a special treat. I'm pleased to introduce Latin Grammy nominated musician and Every Texan team member, Gina Chavez, to play a tribute song to Darren.
Hey, Every Texan. My name is Gina Chavez. I'm been on staff for 11 years and very excited to be here to honor Darren Walker. Darren, thank you so much for your vision for social and racial justice. I hope you enjoy this little tribute, and thank y'all again for having me as part of this year's Legacy Award honoring Darren Walker. I was born by the river in a little tent, oh, and just like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gon' come. Oh yeah, yes it will, yes it will. It's been too hard living, I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's out there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gon' come. Oh yeah, yes it will, yes it will.
Yes, it will. Yeah. Change gonna come, change gonna come. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. Change, yes, it will. Oh, yes, it will.
Thank you, Gina. I have chills. I'm happy to turn it over to Secretary Cisneros to facilitate a fireside chat with our 2021 Legacy honoree, Darren Walker.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your introduction. Thank you for inviting me to play this role today. But thank you mostly for your agreeing to serve as the leader of Every Texan this last year. I've had the good fortune to know Marisa for most of her life. Her father was involved in municipal government in the years that I was city council member and mayor here. And I have great confidence that we're going to see some dramatic forward progress on the equity agenda in Texas, because Marisa has been thinking about it pretty much all her life and preparing for it. The right person for the right job at the right time. It's a special treat to be able to join today to interview my friend Darren Walker, whom I have known since the years that he was at the Rockefeller Foundation in the early 1990s, and I served as a board member there. I want to thank the producers of this program for selecting the photograph of Darren that they did to promote the effort. That is the biggest smile, but behind it is the biggest laugh that characterizes Darren. And he really is a person who loves life and loves people. And again, this is a case of the right person in the right position. I see that Darren from the screen is sitting in his office at the Ford Foundation overlooking the East River in New York. And this miracle of technology makes it possible to have him before all of us at this celebration today. Darren, we know you to be a person who believes in Dr. King's quotation that the arc of progress bends toward justice. And even though there may be periods of setbacks and periods of retrenchment, on the whole, we have great faith and optimism that the country moves in the direction of justice and inclusion and progress. And the Ford Foundation certainly has been a major force, not just a believer, but an active force in creating a sense of openness and inclusion and progress for our country. Give us a sense, Darren, now that you've been at the Ford Foundation for a number of years and you're in effect, have a wonderful vantage point from which to see the progress of the country as a whole, how you see things today. At this moment, we're dealing with the remnants of COVID, which unfortunately cost so many deaths in our country, and a continuing vaccine resistance and an economy that's adjusting to the aftermath of a pandemic, the hyperpartisanship that is hard to square with the needs that we have, and some attitudes that we thought that had gone away, but seem to continue to drive the public dialogue and public policy. Tell me how you keep your sense of direction, balance, those traits that I have known for all these years that are so positive and committed to this agenda of forward progress for all.
Thank you, Henry. You know, it's always great to be with you, my friend, and to have a chance to be a part of this program and be recognized is enormously gratifying. And I do want to acknowledge, as you did, Marisa's extraordinary, amazing leadership and the work of the board and all of the supporters of Every Texan. And of course, Gina Chavez's sultry, soulful rendition of that profoundly important civil rights anthem. So grateful, Gina, for your beautiful talent. I am very hopeful in this moment, Henry, in spite of the treacherous waters that we are navigating as a society. And of course, my beloved home state, which in this moment of turmoil is most certainly ground zero of the challenge, the existential threats we are seeing in the world. The two primary ones that concern me are, of course, climate change, which is real and material, and the issue of the second, which is growing inequality, which is, in my view, among the most pernicious and ultimately destructive elements that we see in society today, because growing inequality is a problem because it is harmful to our democracy, ultimately. Because at the end of the day, hope is the oxygen of democracy, and inequality is the enemy of hope. One of the things that you and I have been lucky to do is to travel the world and to see countries in the world, countries that we used to call third world countries. These are places where there is often little hope and little optimism. And the one thing that America has stood for is not just a country, a republic, but an idea that is rooted in hope and optimism and a belief in the ability for social mobility, the kind that you and I experienced, to be possible. And I fear that in America and in Texas, too many people do not feel as I felt as a little boy enrolling in that first Head Start class, walking down that dirt road from a little shotgun shack in Ames, Texas, in Liberty County. I felt my country was cheering me on, that America wanted me to succeed. And while it was true that I did not possess many of the material goods that made it possible for me to be middle class, which we weren't, I absolutely, though, had a country that I felt was cheering me on. And what I worry about today is that too many people, Black, brown, white, rural especially, do not feel that America is cheering them on. And so we've got to do that work. The challenge, Henry, is that too many people are committed to the status quo. And what I mean by that is too many people like you and me, who even in a pandemic have been winners economically. And that is something to remind ourselves, that those of us who have been lucky enough to be asset owners, we've had real estate, we've been able to invest in the stock market. We are winners, even in a pandemic when most Americans have lost ground. Those of us with the most gained even more, a greater share of the bounty of this country. And so we have to ask ourselves, not what are we willing to give back, but what are we willing to give up in order to ensure that more people have opportunity, more people have a chance to get on the mobility escalator, which, by the way, has slowed down or has stopped. So if you want the American dream, move to Canada, because the Canadians are outperforming us on every metric of social and economic mobility and well-being. So we've got to get back to the job of being America. The trends that we are seeing, the policies that are being promulgated are not policies that are going to make America be America. These are policies that are going to make America look more like a developing world country where fewer and fewer people have more and more of the economic bounty and live in a parallel universe behind gated communities with their children going to private schools, living with security. I mean, these are the things, the trends that we see in our country that should deeply trouble us.
Darren, you're sitting atop a $13 billion philanthropy, and we're so proud of you. A young man grew up in Ames, Texas, and it rises to the top of the American philanthropic ladder, but even you would say power and influential ladder. And you have made equity the centerpiece. From the day you arrived, the word came out of the Ford Foundation, bring me ideas that advance the equity concept. And you've been funding those. Tell us a bit about what that means in concrete terms to be an entity committed to an inclusion agenda, to an equity agenda. What have you done? What do you expect to do? How's it going?
Let me just say that you started by saying that we're a $13 billion foundation. That was true 18 months ago. But we're a $16 billion foundation now.
Okay.
Into a pandemic. We have, after giving away almost $800 million, we've still grown by $3 billion because that's the way wealth among wealthy endowed institutions, wealthy universities, including my wonderful alma mater, our wealth has grown disproportionately. So how do we think about fairness? Equity is the way we think about fairness. And so what I have discussed with our trustees and we have as a policy is ensuring that we provide those institutions, those nonprofits, those issues that have traditionally been marginalized with the kind of resources that they deserve to receive. So I'll give you very specific examples.
Please.
Look at our arts program. So the Ford Foundation funds the arts in America. We announced a few months ago our largest arts initiative. The grants look like this. The Whitney Museum got $500,000. The Studio Museum got $5 million. Lincoln Center received $1 million. The Apollo Theater received $7 million. The Houston Museum of Fine Arts received $250,000. Project Row House in Houston received $4 million. That's what equity looks like. Doesn't mean we don't believe that Lincoln Center, I'm on the board of Lincoln Center, but Lincoln Center is a wealthy institution. The Apollo Theater is not. It does not have the endowment. It does not have the billionaire board members.
What are the other spheres, Darren?
The other spheres,
education.
The other spheres would be criminal justice reform.
Criminal justice.
So let's look at criminal justice reform and how we're funding organizations like Equal Justice Initiative or the NAACP Legal Defense Fund.
Got it.
Organizations like that. And we're funding them at what would be significant general operating support multi-year grants, because equity requires us to change how we think about funding, not only who we're funding, but how we fund, the kind of grants that we do. And that's meant that we as a philanthropy have had to change our own practices in order to respond. So
Darren, outside the realm of philanthropy, there's some fundamental changes contemplated in public policy today. The Biden administration has put in place things like this massive rescue program, to be followed by an infrastructure program, to be followed hopefully by a multi-trillion-dollar family initiative that deals with things like pre-K education, children's credits, tax credits for children, sick leave for families, et cetera, a whole range of things related to making it possible for families to function in the society, for children to get a leg up, move forward. What's your take on the public policy environment today? I'm not asking you to make a political judgment, but just in the overall rubric of what we need to be doing at this time, how does it look to you?
Well, it certainly is encouraging and promising. I think the question is, can we, as a nation, overcome our demons? This country needs healing. There is far too much hate in America today, Henry. I am sorry to say. Hate as a currency has been legitimized and has been taken from the corners and the shadows of our society and brought to the center and normalized. And
Tell
so
me
those-
why do you think that is? Why?
I think inequality contributes to that, right?
Yeah.
So we in this country have Americans, white, black, brown, rural, urban, who are falling farther behind. And that generates resentment. It generates anger. It generates the necessity of finding someone, some group, some other who are responsible for this. And I think there is no doubt, if we're to be honest, that race and racism and white supremacy are a part of that problem. I think the reality that we saw in January affirms this, because democracy is the greatest threat to white supremacy.
Darren,
And we
are
saw the
you-
response, and now we see the policy
right.
response.
Are you optimistic about the American future? Where do you come down personally?
Henry, personally, I am unabashedly, unwavering in my unconditional optimism about America. And that comes from my experience, my personal story, like
Right.
your personal story, is
Right.
one that leaves you and me only optimistic. But it also comes from the experience of the people whose shoulders I stand on.
But it also
Because-
comes, in your case, from the position that you're in
Absolutely.
and what you can do, and the place you've been given to really make a
Absolutely.
difference.
It does. It
Mhm.
does. But it comes from a history. We in this country, Black folks in America, have been among the most optimistic believers in this country.
Mhm.
I am reminded of Langston Hughes's great poem, Let America Be America Again, in which he says, let America be America again. America never was America to me. He was voicing his anger at the humiliation that he experienced as a Black man of great talent. But his last stanza, he ends by saying, but oh yes, one day America will be. And so for 400 plus years, we have had folks in this country, Black, white, brown, believing in America, even in the case of African Americans, when America didn't believe in us. And we had people like Fannie Lou Hamer and John Lewis who knew that in their own lifetime, they would never see justice, but they believed. And so for me, it's not just because I'm here at the Ford Foundation that I am optimistic. It's because I owe them optimism. I
It takes
owe them the
that kind of
commitment.
optimism.
Absolutely.
Well, it takes that kind of optimism now in Texas. So I want to draw you back to your home state, which you see from a few thousand miles away, although I know you do spend some time here. But what is your sense of what the hell is going on in Texas?
You know, it's so interesting, Henry, because Texas, you know, for those of us who grow up in that state, we can never get it out of our DNA. It is impossible, no matter where you are in the world, if you grew up in that state, to not feel some affinity, but also to not feel both pride and rage about that state, that I love, that I feel such a sense of emotional connection to. And yet, Texas is probably the the geography with the most contradictions of what America and a state can be. And what I mean by that is Texas takes great pride in it being the kind of state that a family, an individual, entrepreneur can move to and do well. But it also is a place of tremendous poverty. Yes, some of the richest people in America, but also some of the poorest people in America.
Yeah.
And the issues of where race is used as a wedge to divide people, the issues of class and geography. And so I would just simply hope that leaders in Texas of whatever ilk or party will operate from a perspective of dignity, believing in the dignity that every Texan possesses, and that every Texan ought to live with dignity, and that leaders have a responsibility to act and lead from a position of grace and generosity and love, and a belief that everybody's voice ought to be heard, particularly in the democratic process, that the more Texans who engage, the better that state will be. And any effort to do anything but that, to ensure that as many Texans as possible can participate in the democratic process, undermines democracy in Texas.
Darren, let's bring it down to every Texan. This is a body of people who believe in a better future for Texas, a more inclusive future for Texas, who've worked hard to advocate for positive legislation and fight those things that would limit voting rights or flood more guns into the state or limit choice for women, et cetera. All issues that we've wrestled with in the last months in Texas to national headlines. What bywords, what watchwords, what encouragement, what can you say to the every Texan community from your perspective?
First of all, this organization is essential to the strength of the democracy in that great state. That institutions like Every Texan is not only necessary, but without it, I fear for the strength of the Texas democracy. And so we have to understand that democracy is always contested in a multiracial, multicultural America. Texas, it's going to be contested, and therefore we need resilient, durable institutions. This is not like a vaccine or some randomized controlled trial for which we will find the answer. Justice in Texas will always be contested, and therefore we must have at the forefront justice-seeking institutions led by people like Marissa Bono, who are unrelenting in their leadership. This is why every Texan is needed today, more than ever.
Darren, thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Marissa, but I just want to say to you personally, I am so proud that you are where you are. Many of us have fought for a long, long time saying that the reason why we would want people of color and people who've been marginalized in the past to head major institutions is because they make a difference when they're there. You, as an African-American man from Texas at the head of the Ford Foundation, are making a difference because you are there. So it's a great, great moment. We have to make sure that difference reaches everybody as extensively as we can. You're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren and Henry, for a candid and illuminating conversation on our landscape today, what's needed to continue the torch and carry that torch forward, how philanthropy can support systemic change, and how Texas's critical future absolutely must be people-centered. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for paving the way. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to recognize my predecessors, Judge Scott McCown and Beeson, who are here with us today as well. Thank you for your leadership and getting Every Texan to the point where we are today. I would like to take a moment now before we continue with hearing from Darren. I'm very pleased to ask two Every Texan board members, John Michael Vincent Cortez and Leroy Cavazos Reina, to join us for a special message.
Can't hear you, Leroy, and we want to hear you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Every Texan's Legacy event. I'm C. Leroy Cavazos Reina, a proud board member of Every Texan.
And I'm John Michael Cortez.
And we are honored to serve on the board of this great organization, Every Texan, and as your official and hilarious guides on how you can continue to impact the evolving mission and critical work of advancing social justice in our state for all Texans.
Yeah, that's right, Leroy. So we should go ahead and get started. Although I've got to say, since I've hardly left my house for the last 18 months, I'm really not sure I can guide anyone anywhere.
Well, we'll have to try anyways. Hey, John Michael, did you know that the Texas legislature is doing another redistricting this year?
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I was actually trying to come up with some clever redistricting jokes in preparation for this thing today, but I struck out.
That's such a shame, my friend. Did you try Google?
Yeah, of course I tried Google, but every time I Googled the term redistricting joke, the only thing that ever came up were the current Texas congressional maps. So that awkward pause is because this is virtual, but we're all assuming that you're laughing at our hilarious redistricting bit right now.
When you are finished with your bout of uncomfortable and uncontrollable laughter, why not take an opportunity to text us here at Every Texan?
That's right. We need you all to send the word legacy to 844-428-0663.
Again, send the word legacy. Text Every Texan today, the word legacy, to 844-428-0663. Hey, John Michael, not gonna lie, my friend, a fireside chat with Darren Walker and Secretary Henry Cisneros. What a hard act to follow. We stand on the shoulders of giants.
That's right. You're so right, Leroy. By the way, we would be remiss if we did not take a moment at this time to thank the good people at ERCOT. Thanks to them, countless Texas families were reintroduced this winter to the whole concept of fireside chats.
That's pretty cold, John Michael. That is pretty cold, my friend. Speaking of temperatures, let's take a check in on our giving thermometer to see who is giving to Every Texan right now by texting the word legacy to us.
Let's see that thermometer. I think we're all used to those ones they zap at your forehead now. That's a pretty old school looking thermometer. I don't think I can recall the last time I saw something that's just so old fashioned.
Have you ever set foot, John Michael, in the Texas Capitol?
Yeah, I know that place is pretty old fashioned too, but I also know as well as anybody that social justice requires public policy. And that unfortunately means setting foot inside the Pink Dome, whether we like it or not.
Right, I got you, my friend. Here we are in the middle of a global pandemic, in the middle of a national racial reckoning, and a lot of Texas families are struggling. But it gives me great hope that we are on the board of an organization using public policy to advance equality, to advance opportunity for all Texans of all backgrounds. I feel inspired today, as I did when James Aldrete, the chairman of our board, asked me to serve on this board for Every Texan, knowing that all of the folks in our virtual room today recognize what we recognize, that public policy can and will improve the lives of people.
That's right. And I honestly can't think of anything else that has improved more Texans' lives this year, except maybe HEB curbside.
Maybe we can all take a moment to close our eyes and pretend we're picking up our curbside order of HEB Hatch Chili Cheese Chips. Then help us all by texting Every Texan right now. Text us the word legacy to 844-428-0663.
Well, Leroy, if I close my eyes, I can't really text.
Oh, my friend, you're not part of the Generation Z, huh?
No, I'm not. I'm well past that. I may not be a member of the latest generation, but we know how important it is to think about the next generation.
Absolutely, John Michael. I couldn't agree with you more. We have witnessed firsthand the importance of building a better future, not just for us, but for all Texans.
Exactly. So, for example, when you give to Every Texan, you're helping build a state where every Texan has affordable, quality healthcare access.
Wow, imagine that. John Michael, you mean to tell me that we would not have 5 million uninsured Texans? I've got one for you. When you give to Every Texan today by texting the word legacy, you're investing in a state where every Texan has access to healthy food and no Texan goes hungry. We have over 4 million Texans experiencing food insecurity today.
Well, Leroy, I hope you're hungry for more facts, because by donating to Every Texan, we invest in over 5 million Texan public school students to make sure that they have a robust, well-funded public education.
And it takes investing in our people to do this. Texans care about making smart investments in our people in order to build a state where every Texan thrives. When you give today to your supporting organization, Every Texan, we see a future where all Texas residents are supported by a just and equitable tax system.
So, folks, if your vision is to come together and build a future Texas where every Texan thrives, join us today with your donation. Text the word legacy to 844-428-0663.
The future of Texas is bright indeed. Our horizon is vast. So join Every Texan and use your phone today to text legacy to 844-428-0663.
Leroy, I'm so happy to support a policy agenda that is people-driven and addresses our state's greatest challenges. We hope you can join us with your donation today and join us in building a just and equitable state.
To everyone joining us today, to the people who fuel the Every Texan mission, and to each and every one of you out there, thank you for your generous support of an organization that is building a more equitable Texas for future generations to come. John Michael, it's always an honor to stand by your side, my friend, and fundraise for a mission that we both truly believe in and that we are helping expand through all of our vast collaborations. Thank you to everyone for being with us today and for supporting Every Texan and all Texas families.
Likewise, Leroy, every session with you is a special session.
Thank you, John Michael and Leroy. I think we all needed that spot of humor. Today is the first day of our next marathon special session. Not easy to engage in that type of dialogue on Zoom. Thank you again for your leadership and support on the board. Darren, turning back to you, your vision for racial and social justice raises the bar for Texas, our nation, and the globe. We're so grateful for your dedication to systemic lasting change. We are honored to award you with the Texas 2021 Legacy Award, and hopefully you've received the award by now in the mail. I'd like to invite you at this time to give your remarks.
Well, I will just say thank you so much, Marissa, and to my friends, Ann Beeson and Scott McCowan, to the board. I am enormously humbled and grateful for this recognition on behalf of everyone at the Ford Foundation, our trustees and the staff, and the hundreds of grantees around the world. This is meaningful to me because Texas played an indomitable role in my life. It is impossible for me to reflect on how that state impacted my trajectory, how it shaped me, the person I am, how the experiences I had there prepared me for my life here in New York. So I believe that justice, the work that you all do, is essential. And I'll leave you with something that Dr. King said about philanthropy. Secretary Cisneros started with the quote of the moral arc of the universe. And I am reminded what Dr. King said about philanthropy. He said the following: philanthropy is commendable, but it should not allow the philanthropist to overlook the economic injustice which makes philanthropy necessary. And what Dr. King was saying was that the work of philanthropy is not only generosity and charity, but it must also be justice and dignity. And so the work that Every Texan does is an extension, a response to Dr. King's challenge that we must seek dignity and justice, and that charity and generosity are important, crucial, essential, but ultimately it is a more just world that we seek. And that's the work that you all are doing. And that's why it makes me so proud and so humbled to receive this recognition. So thank you, Marissa.
Thank you, Darren. We're so proud as well, and we're inspired by your leadership. And I know I, for one, and based on the messages and texts I'm getting from our team right now, we're ready to take it on and continue our mission here and our fight here in Texas. And thanks to each and every one of you joining us today. I'd like to make a special recognition before we move on to the Benedictine Sisters who are here with us today. Hello, Sister Mika and others. The Benedictine Sisters founded Every Texan over 36 years ago because they wanted to be the change that they wanted to see in the world. And they saw a Texas that was failing certain groups of people and letting them slip through the cracks, and they decided to do something about it. So thank you for your foundational leadership and support. Now for our special announcement. Annually, as part of our Legacy Award event, we recognize Texans under the age of 40 who are doing remarkable work to advance opportunity, justice, and equity for Texans of all backgrounds. I'm excited to announce this year's Future of Texas honorees. Our 2021 Future of Texas Award recipients are Andrea Segovia from the Transgender Education Network of Texas, TENT, and Charlie Bonner from Move, Texas. Our Texan organizers and activists are laying the groundwork for our future Texas. We're inspired by their visions, their tenacity, their will to build a more just and inclusive state by engaging with and mobilizing everyday Texans. People-centered public policy cannot happen without the powerful civic and community level work that individuals like Charlie and Andrea are doing in our state today. Charlie and Andrea have played crucial roles in leading movements and in advocating for policies made by everyday Texans. They are the future of Texas. We will honor Andrea and Charlie during our in-person Legacy affiliated event on November 16th at the South Congress Hotel. Thanks to our event sponsors, Every Texan will host a cocktail reception and a policy discussion with 2 special guest Texas legislators. We're looking forward to hosting our Legacy sponsors. If you're interested in attending, we will sell tickets to this event, so please look out for more details to come. Thank you again for joining us today to honor Darren Walker. We can achieve a just and equitable Texas through people-led policymaking. So grateful for each of you. Thank you for joining us today. Adelante.